My name is Bengt-Erik Johnson, and I'm a president of Uppsala Rotary Club, Uppsala Aros Rotary Club to be exact. That's very important in Uppsala. And I'm the incoming host area coordinator for Rotary Peace Center from the 1st of July this year. And since Tourist still is affected by COVID-19, I will be the one coordinating today's program. But I think it will be also the students doing this. We've had a long tradition of luncheon for our Peace Fellows and their host families at this time of the year to get together and share experiences. But as you know, COVID-19 has turned everything upside down. So instead of being able to have this luncheon, we have to skip the meal part of it, but stick to the most interesting part of the program, which is the presentation of each student from the second class, or in this case, class 18, I guess. And we're looking forward to hear from their experiences. But before I hand over to the students, I'd like to invite Peter Wallensteen to give us a background to the Uppsala Rotary Peace Center success story. As you all know, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the devoted work that Peter has put into this. So Peter, I'll hand over the word to you.
Thank you very much. And it's fun to see so many people participating. So let me just say a couple of words about the history, because this year has a number of anniversaries. The first one I think of is the 10th anniversary of the Uppsala University and the department starting the Rotary Peace Center that we are all here for today. And as you know, there are 7 such centers around in the world. So it's a major investment from the Rotary International. And it started almost 20 years ago with where the question was what to do after the polio plus. And the idea was we'll do something for peace. So one built up this program with the Rotary Peace Centers. And today there is a funding for it with a big fund of about $150 million, which will make it sort of self and independent to run from the interest of this money. So now these 7 centers, after about the first 10 years, one was dissatisfied with one of the centers and canceled that center and announced a competition for a new center to be created. And about 100 universities applied, and among those was Uppsala. And in the end, there were 5 remaining. We were evaluated, and as somebody said, we came first to Uppsala, and you put the bar so high that the others could not compete. So we got the center. But of course, we are aware of what happened to other centers. So it's important that we keep the quality and the evaluations keep going. So it is a fun and important program, and you will hear more for it. But clearly, one of the arguments that was in favor of us in Uppsala was the commitment of the Rotary clubs here in Uppsala. So I am myself a member of the Carolina Rotary Club, but all the 8 clubs have been very much involved. And I think they were particularly impressed, the evaluators, when they met the Vice Chancellor, and he also had his Rotary emblem on him. So he had his pin. That was good. There is also another anniversary this year, and that is that the department is 50 years old. It was started in 1971. And we are going to celebrate that a bit in the autumn. And I think we'll have reasons to come back to that. But that was really a very special event when we became an autonomous part of the Faculty of Social Science here in Uppsala. So we'll have reasons to come back to that. There is also a 60th anniversary, a more tragic one, and that's 60 years since Dag Hammarskjöld died in Ndola in what is today Zambia in 18th of September 1961. And that's also important, as Hammarskjöld was very closely connected to Uppsala. So this year there will be a celebration of that. But for us in the peace research, it meant that the parliament, 20 years after Hammarskjöld's death, created a special chair in the name of Dag Hammarskjöld, the Dag Hammarskjöld Chair for Peace and Conflict Research. And I was the first holder of this chair. So that's also another thing to remember. And finally, we have a birth, a newcomer in this family, which the government made a decision on in December this year. And that is to start the Alva Myrdal Center for Nuclear Disarmament, placed at Uppsala University, and honoring another Uppsala person, Alva Myrdal, who was born here in Uppsala. So that center is now being formed and should be a knowledge center on nuclear disarmament. So lots of things going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. It's very interesting to have this background. And we all know that when the center is there has to be some strong students in the program. And I think we've had that during the years. And now we're very much looking forward to listen to this year's student making their presentations.
Hello, everyone. And first, I want to say thank you to Ben, Eric for the introduction. And also thank you, Professor Peter Wallensteen, for a very proud reflection of the establishment of our center. As Ben, Eric introduced, my name is Muyi. I'm a second-year Rotary Peace Fellow here. I was born in China, and I have actually lived most of my recent life in the US around the Chicago area. And I was living in California before I came here. Last year, I was supposed to go to Lebanon for my AFE and the internship, but COVID and the big explosion in Lebanon made it impossible for me to go. So instead, I had done an internship with Views at our department. Views is one of the conflict prediction system in the world using big data and machine learning algorithms. And later on, I had an internship with the University of Pennsylvania in the US. So we were using the text data and the machine learning techniques to explore the relationship between certain personality traits and the likelihood of that person to believe in conspiracy theories. So besides that, I also got to work with EIT, European Institute of Technology and Innovation, as well as Geneva International, to explore the ways to combine techno innovation and traditional peace building. I was a session leader of last year's Geneva Peace Week for female leadership, techno entrepreneurship, and peace. And I was also leading a few pre-conference dialogues between the session leaders of last year's Geneva Peace Week. I was planning to go to Geneva, but the Swiss government again changed its travel policies at the last minute. Besides those experiences, my background was actually mainly focused on special education for high-risk youth integration and the juvenile reconciliation. I worked in those fields in the US, in the UK, in China, and also in Syria. Currently, I'm running a non-profit school in Syria for marginalized children from different religious and ethnic backgrounds who face the risk of drug addiction, gang violence, and radicalization. I'm also working with Syrians living in Syria and also diaspora groups outside Syria to build a digital learning platform focusing on high quality information on economics, finance, techno innovation, and science. For those children living in conflict countries like Syria, Yemen, Libya, and Iraq. Those children always have and now have very limited access to even the normal quality of knowledge, and specifically in those fields. And that actually left them a high level of vulnerability to be radicalized and manipulated by extremism. So we are trying to counter this long-term detrimental impact of war for those young children and the future generations in those countries. And right now we are in conversation with UNESCO and UNICEF in Syria to see how we can best collaborate to achieve those goals. I think when I look back, coming to Sweden for me is really like a meant to be choice. I have been very interested in refugee integration issues and wanted to learn more about the Sweden's policies for refugee integration even before I got here. So after I came here, I have spoken with many refugees, many immigrants to see how they view the policies and the programs. I also went to places like Knivsta to see how the temporary housings provided by the migration agencies look like for the refugee applicants. But in addition to this side of the story, I also have talked with public officials working in municipalities, the leaders of the private sectors here who got to employ the refugees and immigrants, and also some of my friends who are police officers and the security guards here to hear the stories from their side. I even talked to some people from certain extreme right-wing political party here in Sweden to see how they think of the issue. I'm very happy to say that I have published an opinion piece on the local Sweden global news platform to share my views as a visitor on the situation of refugee policies, and also hopefully to raise the awareness beyond the local Swedish audience circle. I want to say a few last few words. Since today is about the Rotary Peace Fellow and host family, I wanted to say thank you to my host dad, Jan Smith, who probably is not here right now. He's the owner of the English bookshop who has helped me a lot since he picked me up at the airport 2 years ago. And I wanted to say I have learned so much tremendously from many other Rotarians, including Torre, Stan, and Catherine, who are here, and many, many others. So right now I have been admitted to the MPP program at Oxford, and I'm heading to the UK next year. But I think Sweden will always have a place in my heart. And with all the lifelong friends I made here, and also the amazing memories, I have learned so much, and I have grown so much, and I will always, always cherish that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I think, Muyi, will you hand over to the next?
Sure, I think next is Tinashree, if I remember correctly.
Hi, yes, I am happy to go. So I'm Tinashree. I have met many of you, but in case there are any I have not met, I am a Peace Fellow from Australia. I have an Indian-Australian background, and I'm in my second year as well, where we're currently all working on our thesis and are at varying stages of tearing our hair out. So it's a very interesting time right now. Quick shout out to my host family, Shell and Anne-Catherine. Hi. So I will talk a little bit about my AFE and then a little bit about my thesis topic. So I think sorry, I have a fly that's flying around here that I'm trying to deal with right now. So I think like Muyi, a lot of us had to kind of change our plans with the AFE when we realized how severe the pandemic was becoming. So my initial plan was to work with the International Organization for Migration in Zimbabwe. But that was not going to be a wise decision given the trajectory of the pandemic. So I actually had a really nice time here in Uppsala last summer. It's absolutely beautiful over here in the summer. And I worked with the department, particularly with Lisa Hultman. And what I was working on was basically a data project that was looking at creating better data sources on global peacekeeping. So currently it's really, it can be sort of simple to find base levels of information on different peacekeeping missions that existed. So when they existed, what kind of troop numbers there were, what kind of deployments there were. But the goal of this project was to basically be able to measure that at a more local geographic level. And so we mapped out deployments globally over at the subnational level. So multiple cities, multiple deployment locations, multiple countries, and we kind of used maps from United Nations peacekeeping publishing maps, and we converted them into numeric data so that we could then create some visualizations. One thing I really discovered over that period of time is I kind of really love to code. We use a program called RStudio where we can really get into the statistics and we can map out statistics. We can produce really beautiful visualizations. Is that a 2-minute timer? I wasn't too sure.
Go ahead. You have Yeah, it was 2 minutes. So
Okay, cool. No problem. And so we produced a dashboard I can link you all to actually, which basically lets you visualize peacekeeping deployments from 1993 until now. So let me post that in the chat in a moment. And now I will talk about, I should mention also with what was really nice about that as well is that it was an ongoing project. And so I was employed as a casual research assistant at the department working with Lisa so that we could actually publish the completed data sets and the completed visualizations that we created. So that was my AFE. In terms of my thesis, I'm currently working on, my topic is essentially looking at international aid and how effective it is at reaching its outcomes. And the background for choosing this topic is I'm actually going to be starting a PhD at Stockholm University. So I will be here in Sweden for the next at least 5 years or so. And the broad topic is aid effectiveness. So my thesis is intended as sort of a pilot study to my PhD. I'm looking specifically at the relationship between international agricultural aid and food security. And the reason why I think this is such an important area is because the dissemination of international aid over the past however many years I don't perceive it to be as evidence-based as it could be. A lot of the time it's seen more as an act of charity, and therefore the act of giving money for a certain cause is deemed as the outcome in itself. But I think over the last decade or two, there's been a whole lot of discourse emerging on how we need to understand what gives us the best chance of success. And so can we say, for example, that approaching an aid program in a certain way is most likely to lead to the outcomes that we want? And so what I'm going to look at is how conflict, specifically ethnic conflict and ethnic discrimination, affects the success of international aid in achieving those outcomes. So there's a generally established relationship between agricultural aid and food security. Generally, as aid increases, food security increases as well. There are fluctuations here and there, but generally that can be said. But what I'm looking at is, does that then get affected when you have ethnic discrimination within a country? Can that potentially divert aid from the causes that it's actually seeking to resolve? So, for example, is aid withheld in certain areas? Are there distribution challenges because certain ethnic groups are included? And so that's what I'm going to be doing. I am looking at big statistics to do this, which is a huge learning curve for me, but it's also very exciting. And I'll be working on that over the next 4 or 5 years as well. So one of the things I'm very grateful to this program is for introducing me to that kind of line of work. It's definitely what I wanted when I joined this program. I really care about improving the state of data so that we can make better decisions in peace and development. And I hope that's what I can do over the next 4 or 5 years. So thank you all so much for your support and for listening to me.
Very good. I'll hand over to Jonah.
So yeah, my name is Jonah. I'm also a second-year Peace Fellow. I'm from the US, from Minnesota. And with consideration to the 4-minute time limit, I'm just going to dive right in. I'll say that I started out my Peace Fellowship without a particular area focus. Muyi came in with education background. Tanushree had worked in development and comms, but I was sort of like, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to focus on, but I did know I wanted to develop a skill set, mostly in data management, analysis, and visualization, with the idea that I'm going to find things that I find interesting throughout, the course of my master's program, and I wanted this skill set that would be sort of agnostic to whatever topic I was studying, that I could apply to basically whatever I found interesting. So I ended up getting for my AFE, I ended up being hired as an intern with the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, which is called UNESCAP. And I was hired on to help them with a project mapping inequality in Asia Pacific member states. And they use a particular methodology that's called classification and regression trees. It's a sort of basic form of machine learning. And they just sort of look like decision trees. So it's a bunch of you have like a root node up at the top, and then it splits. And they have different circumstances they're looking at related to inequality. So it could be your household income, your level of education, what area you live in, whether it's urban or rural, these sorts of things. And what's unique about the classification and regression trees is that it gives you a really specific look at a cohort that might be behind in terms of like a sustainable development indicator. So instead of saying, oh, you know, it's women have less access to bank accounts, you know, for instance, for financial inclusion, women have less access than men, or people living in rural areas have less access than people living in urban areas. The classification and regression trees are telling you specifically, no, it's urban women aged 15 to 24 with a high school degree and in the bottom 40% of household income. That's the group that's furthest behind. And this sort of information is really useful for policymakers because they need to know when they're applying policy correctives who exactly to target for their interventions. So that's the work I've been doing with UNSCAP, and I started in last June as an intern, and I'm still working for them now as a consultant. But I thought I can also apply this methodology to conflict research. And so that's what I'm doing for my thesis. I'm looking at just general violence, deaths from organized violence. And instead of having different circumstances, I'm considering different existing theories of conflict. So maybe the level of development in a nation or the population size, all of these different characteristics. And I'm trying to build, similar to the work that I do with UNSCAP, I'm trying to build a profile basically of places where violence is more likely to occur. And then in terms of my future plans, there's a few different directions that I'm considering, possibly continuing within the UN system in their young professional program. But more recently, actually, I've had this sort of exciting idea that my background, before I started as a Peace Fellow, I worked as a trade analyst for a medical device manufacturer. And I have this skill set that I've developed in data analysis. And so I've been thinking more about logistics, because these large humanitarian organizations all have large logistics operations as well, which generally now are, you know, pretty data oriented. And so I've been thinking about that as a potential career, as a way to combine my previous experience, my interest in humanitarian work, and then also the skill set that I've been developing. So that's where I'm at right now. And I think that's 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. We'll hand over directly to Andrew, I think.
Hello, everybody. I just want to firstly thank you all for the many ways you've impacted our lives, big and small. And I especially want to thank Olavi and Lars for being my host family. You know, the pandemic has created a lot of issues for us with our kind of social access, and it's kind of been a bright spot to have a host family to reach out to, and even from a distance wave to on a walk or whatever. So just want to specifically thank Olavi and Lars for the way they've impacted my life and my fiance's life. So that's about a minute. So 3 more to go. I'm just briefly going to mention my AFE and then spend the rest of the time talking about my thesis topic. My AFE was with International Alert. I interned with them. They're based in London. I did not go to London. I stayed in my closet here in Uppsala, Sweden, which was very fun. But I helped them in their monitoring and evaluation department. So my job was to help come up with a platform for International Alert to communicate the lessons they've learned from within their own programming across the organization. So a lot of these large-scale NGOs have learned many lessons throughout their many decades of operation. And if they very much need systems and structures to communicate those lessons to the people that need to know them, and not the people that don't need to know them. So during my AFE, we helped organize a structure to communicate those lessons effectively and efficiently to those populations that need to know them. And we excluded those groups that didn't really need to know them. that's really all I'm going to say about that. I think it was a practical thing to do. It wasn't the most exciting work, but I think sometimes the most important work isn't always the most exciting. And for my thesis, I am studying civil service rotation. So some governments have processes to regularly transfer their employees, their government employees, from place to place. Not all governments do this, but some do a lot of it. So in some countries, all teachers, healthcare workers, meat inspectors, anyone is forced essentially to be transferred from place to place on a regular kind of scheduled basis. In some countries that transfer civil servants, these are huge percentages of the employed population. I'm specifically looking at Botswana, who has a really robust transfer program. Essentially 40% of all government workers, or all workers in Botswana, are somehow connected to the government, employed by the government, and they're all forced to move every 5 years to a whole new region. So it's just a massive movement of people that's kind of regular and scheduled. It's sort of like a spider web. People are moving all over and rotating. So there's this incredible just mixture of people. I'm really interested in quality peace and kind of looking at longer time horizons, and how do you, what kind of interventions can help create more resiliency to conflict. It's harder to measure, but I think it's really interesting. So I'm comparing Botswana to its neighbor, Namibia, who has many similarities to Botswana, many differences, but for what I'm looking at, many important similarities. I'm interested if Botswana, who has the presence of this massive job rotation program, has higher levels of interethnic marriage, higher levels, lower levels of ethnic-based discrimination and kind of stereotyping, and higher levels of political affiliation that's not ethnically based. Basically, I'm measuring if this massive jobs transfer program has an impact on improving interethnic relationships over kind of long time periods. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm in the middle of it right now, and I imagine that's 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're right on spot, actually. Before leaving over to the next slide, I'll give the word to Bibbi Smide, who will talk a little bit about the opportunity to apply to the peace program. We always want to have more applicants. So Bibbi, the word is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I am Bibbi Smide, and my great interest at the moment it is to get as many applicants possible to apply for this wonderful program. And I am the chair of Rotary Peace Fellowship Committee, and some of you I have met previously, your students. Unfortunately, the corona has made it so difficult to meet physically, and I wish times will be better in that respect. What we have done so far is that we have formed an application committee, and we are 3 people working together in this committee. The biggest problem at the moment it is to get applicants, how to get people to be aware of this program, which is such a good program. And so far we have had in Sweden 6 people who have got this, who have studied within this program, but nobody since 2012, unfortunately. So my very big thing now it is to try to tell all people I know about this program, please contact me. Try to tell people about the program and so. And I will not go into detail now about what the program consists of and to which universities in the world you can go to, but please contact me if you have any questions you have about this program, and I will be very, very happy to tell you about it. And I think that's all what I want to say now, because the big interest it is to get applicants. How can we have people to understand what this is about, and why are Swedish students, Swedish people not applying for this program? That's what bothers me most at the moment. And I say thank you with that, and I think that's my 2 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. Please contact me. I will be so happy then.
Thank you very much, Bibbi. Let's get back to our interesting student presentations. The next, I think, is Jonah.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you all. And also special hello to my host dad, Mats. Thanks for having us. I think everyone has already put it really beautifully, how much this program truly is life-changing. I think we'll never fully understand and realize how much our lives have been changed because of this program, but I feel it deeply and I feel it every day. And so I just want to start with that. So thank you. But yes, I'm Jordan. I am also from the United States, specifically Colorado. If you've been to Colorado, if you've heard of Colorado, it actually reminds me a lot of Sweden. I think our Coloradans are very akin to Swedes, as they love to be outside and appreciate the great outdoors. So coming here, I have felt a lot of happiness and familiarity. So that's been really, really great. I will also briefly talk about my EAP, and then I'll spend a lot of time on my thesis, and then briefly touch on what's next, maybe, because there's really more questions than answers at this point. As everyone else, I was hoping to go abroad. I was actually looking at working with Mediators Beyond Borders and going to Northern Ireland and working at an institution that focuses on women mediators. But of course, COVID came and I had to think hard about what I wanted to do. I still wanted to make sure I was able to fully use this opportunity and develop some skills. And so I had talked to Professor Eric Melander here at the department. And coming into this program, I had a huge interest in gender and the gender dimensions of peace and conflict. And Eric is an expert in that. And so he proposed a research project that he was beginning and offered me to come along and join him on this opportunity to basically co-author a paper with him. And it terrified me. And because it terrified me, I knew that was probably what I should do. The research process coming in was something that was pretty unfamiliar to me. And that was a big reason why the program in general at Uppsala was intimidating. But it's absolutely one of the greatest skills that I've developed here is learning the research process and how difficult it is to conduct rigorous and quality research. And so I had the great opportunity to work with Eric, and we are currently in the final stages of writing a review paper that kind of bridges the gap between the fields of military and gender theory. And we asked the question, how does societal gender equality affect military effectiveness? So we are hopefully going to publish that before I leave here. And now currently, as we've talked about, we are all working on our theses. And as Tanushree said, and varying different levels of pulling out our hair. So I am doing that as well. And coming into this program, again, I really thought I would have a very international focus, as many of us have. Obviously, we all have an interest and curiosity about the world around us. But over the last 4 years, as I've witnessed the Trump administration in the United States and kind of seen what it has done to the United States and how it has continued to expose the divides that existed already and continue to create greater divides in our country, I became more and more interested in the United States and polarization that was happening. Obviously, on January 6th, I'm sure most of us are familiar that there was an attempted insurrection that occurred at the United States Capitol, where I believe 5 people lost their lives. And that was kind of this moment of everything that we've seen and felt coming for so many years. And it was in that moment where you see these images, many images of people who belong to groups like white nationalist groups, for example. Many of the people at those protests and at the insurrection were a part of those groups. And you see men being most of those images. And so it left me wondering, where are the women? Where are the women in these groups? I know they're there. I know they're a part of these institutions, but they may not play these visible roles that we see that the media exposes. And so that's what moment kind of brought me to look at that specifically. And so the question I'm asking is, how does women's participation in white nationalist groups affect the group's propensity for violence? And I've proposed a perhaps counterintuitive hypothesis that we are currently in the works of testing. Is I actually propose that groups that have women participants will have a greater propensity for violence than groups without. I have found that this is a very understudied field. These groups are very secretive. These groups, for obvious reasons, but even more so for how women participate with them due to this intersection of misogyny and racism that comes together and kind of creates the pillars of how these groups operate. And so it's been really difficult to find data, and I'm realizing that is the headache I think a lot of researchers have, but it's been fascinating and it's really, really important. And I think coming out of this process, I realized how important it is and why I want to continue with this work. So I will report back what I find at our next seminar, I guess, is when we report our findings and our theses. But in regards to what's next, what I'm looking at is a lot of what I've been thinking about in this thesis of so often I think that we do in this field of peace and conflict research, unfortunately, is we take peace building and we kind of put that as a thing of something that's happening beyond more developed countries. This is something that's happening in lesser developed countries and countries that are quote unquote poor. And I realize that is something that we need to be better about not doing, and realizing that there's so much work we need to do at home and within our own borders. And so I kind of just want to end with imploring everybody to kind of think and be self-reflective about how we can be a part. There's conflict occurring, even in micro levels here in our own nations, in Sweden and the United States. And it's important for us to kind of be self-reflective about that and how we can apply peace building here as well. And so that's something I'm hoping to do. I've been awarded the Presidential Management Fellowship finalist role. And so I'm hoping to be working within the United States government next year. But it's very competitive, so we'll see about that. But thank you, everyone, for your time. I probably went over, so I apologize.
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation, Jonah. We'll go directly to Camille.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. I hope everybody is able to hear me. My name is Kamil. I am from Pakistan, and I also am in the middle of completing my thesis. And as you can see, I have no hair, therefore I torn it all out because of stress. But speaking a bit more seriously, I thought that I'd start by giving you a bit of background about what brought me here to Rotary. My job prior to obtaining this fellowship was at the Aga Khan University Examination Board, which is basically an educational movement aimed at bringing high quality education to lower and middle income households in Pakistan. And because, of course, Pakistan is a country of over 200 million people, it would do this through two ways. The first was, of course, through its own systems of assessment and curriculum development. But secondly, and I think a lot more relevantly, it also had as part of its mandate this desire to act as a model examination board for many other such organizations that were operating on a larger scale in the country. So a lot of the work that we did wasn't just, in terms of our own students and our own assessment, but in terms of how we would inform assessment methods for larger examination boards. One of the areas that I was very interested in, and that I actually mentioned in my application to Rotary, was on the concept of 21st century learning, which essentially focused on how a lot of younger children were being exposed to methods of 21st century skill acquisition. Now, these skills were, were normally associated with making them better students in the long term. I, however, felt that these skills also represented a potential avenue of peacemaking, of helping students to resolve personal and interpersonal conflicts a lot more easily and with a lot less, without necessarily resorting to violence or to open conflict. So in chat right now, I just posted one of the videos that I helped work on, while at AKUEB, and I encourage you to go and watch that when you can. Fast forwarding a bit, when my summer AFE, which was the internship between the first and second year, was spent with my classmate Samikshya, we were working with Dr. Erika Forsberg. Her project focused on using 3 different data sets from India, from Nepal, and from Colombia on women's participation in civil society post-violence. It was a pretty interesting time because that was, I think, my first experience conducting independent literature reviews and conducting, really putting the research skills that I had learned about throughout my first year to the test. Of course, this also made for a good segue into the fall semester, which was when I did my second internship. That was with Dr. Christine Eck, and it focused on police oversight reforms, in multiple countries across the world. Now, although I focused on both New Zealand and Ireland as the primary cases that I worked on for those, the semester, it also, gave me the opportunity to apply many of the the research methods that I learned back home. And that also allowed me to write about police oversight in Pakistan, which it may not surprise you to learn is a very complicated, a very messy affair. And ultimately, that is what helped inspire my current thesis topic, which sort of ties back to all the work that I've done so far. My thesis focuses on how rising authoritarianism across the globe affects illiberal democracies. And I use the term illiberal democracies for a reason, because I'm referring to a very specific subset of states, of which Pakistan is one, where there may be democratic norms in place, but where there is a constant and persistent danger of authoritarian tendencies to overshadow these democratic norms. And essentially what I'm looking at is a case study of Pakistan, where my argument is that because of rising authoritarianism on a global scale over the past decade, there has been a definitive trend within my country towards more authoritarian, elements both within the government and within extra-governmental forces, essentially seizing more power. And it's a pretty interesting, topic to reflect upon, because a lot of the data sources that I'm using are people from my own background, are people who I've known personally. And I think it really, a lot of the work that I've been struggling with is a lot of soul searching in terms of how close am I to this subject, how involved do I necessarily want to be, and how much do I want my hypothesis to be proven true. I can't exactly, I can't give you an answer as to what, I've concluded with just now, but hopefully I will have one in June. And beyond that, I'm hoping to remain in Sweden. I haven't yet decided whether or not I want to conduct a PhD. So at the moment, I'm actually job hunting, but I'm hoping to still work in an academic context and perhaps arrive to a decision as to whether or not I want to, pursue a PhD by next year. I think that's everything for now. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you very much. We'll hand over, we'll take the question later on and hand over right now to Sami.
Hi, everyone. Sorry if my voice might be, I am having some throat issues. So, hello, everyone, once again. I can see my host moms here, like Catherine and Karine. So hi to them as well. And like I would like to thank them as well, like for all they have done so far, like throughout my stay here. So it has been quite challenging year. So yeah, I needed a lot of support, and my family and especially my peers here have been a great help and a great family actually. So yeah, I'm really thankful for this support system that Rotary has here, host family and this cohort, you know. Now moving ahead of my presentation today, I will be talking about, first I will be talking about what things that I learned or throughout my 2 years stay here, and then I will talk about my AFE and briefly talk about my thesis in the end. So my area of interest in this particular peace and conflict study was transitional justice and socio-psychological impact of conflict. And I had been doing some work like independently at, studying about these issues when I was back in home in Nepal. And one of my major reason behind, especially for the interest on transitional justice, was also the fact that my country is still in the process of, it's still ongoing. And so the cases are still not heard, like the hearing of cases has still not been taken place. So and I had this idea, this idea that delayed justice is justice denied. And I even wrote a paper wrote an article on it when I was back home. But now after coming here, I also did a course on transitional justice in my second semester here. And that has been like, if I had to choose my favorite course, it would be transitional justice, because it actually taught me a lot and also made me reflect on this idea that I had about it, is, delayed transitional justice is actually as bad as I thought before. I mean, it is, of course, like, it has some effect, but it might not be this, that, I mean, sometimes the hard, like, those justice delivery system, which has kind of, like in some countries, we have seen that, like, in the process of delivering justice, like quite, this hard, like when trying to deliver it on time, or like in shorter period of time, how many people were left out and what like implication that had. So this kind of learning like made me reflect my own preconceived ideas on this particular issue. So yeah, that was one thing. And another thing is, like, I realized how much my interest in the gender aspect of peace and conflict studies as well. So as Kamil mentioned, for my AFE, I worked with Erika Forsberg, and especially on this one particular project of hers, which was gender war trauma and peace building. And I had been involved in this project since the inception phase, even when I was in Nepal. So yeah, in 2018, I was there, like, in the planning and everything, and even the field work. And I had taken surveys and interviews and focus group discussion during that period of time. And this project was really near to my heart. So when during my AFE, what I did was, so like I wrote a small brief paper on like how how the title of the paper was Agency to Victimhood, where I talked about how the female combatants who felt like some sort of agency during this wartime, how that turned into like a kind of victimhood in the post conflict scenario when they had to go back to the community. So like, during the social reintegration process, how they were kind of excluded and how they were not accepted in the society, in their family, in the communities, and how even the leadership of their own party, like the Maoist party, who had like this, who were very, during the war, they were like very pro gender equality, how they, kind of ignored in the aftermath of the conflict. So and when I talked to this, when I was was interviewing this female ex-combatants, I really I myself was so oblivious about so many things. I realized so yeah, this kind of that particular experience had quite an impact on me. So that's why like I really wanted to work on their issues, like female ex-combatants issues. So that's why when I got this opportunity to work on it again, I took that opportunity to write at least something on, you know, this particular aspect. So I wrote this small brief paper. It was not that great, honestly, quality wise, but like I could do something that I really cared for. So that was a very good experience for me. And for my thesis, actually, again, that particular experience in 2018 had like, again, quite an impact on me. So I wanted to continue working on the issues of female ex-combatant. And one another issue that I identified when I was in the, you know, I was doing this field work or was the differences in experiences of female ex-combatants of one particular reason and another reason. So, you know, they have like, so I realized this how this intersectional identities of, you know, female ex-combatants led to different experiences. So that was like, and no, I realized like not much has been talked about this, and especially in context of female ex-combatants. So I wanted to study what effects intersectional identities of female ex-combatants have on their social reintegration process. So that was my preferred thesis idea, but like, because it's like 20, you know, this we are in midst of pandemic, and there were like so many challenges, so I didn't have enough resources and also time to get access to like quality data. So what I decided was to like change my topic, and now I'm looking into how like revolutionary movement, what effects revolutionary movement have on feminist discourse in post-revolutionary states. So that is my current topic. I don't know how much time I have left, but I think this is.
I think you have to round up.
Okay, yes. So this is what I have for today. Yes, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of interesting and a lot of energy in all your presentations. So thank you. We have two more to go, and next is Maryam.
Thank you, and good to see you all. A special thanks to my host family, Stin and Elizabeth. I'm Maryam Safi from Afghanistan, the second year of Peace Fellow. In Afghanistan, I was involved in the different projects for women's rights, human rights, peace building, and girls' education. And before I came to Rotary program, I worked with International IDEA in Stockholm, and that was about elections and democracy. Now I will talk briefly about my AFE experience and also my thesis topic. For my AFE, since I joined the program, I had in my mind, I actually planned that I will work with the Embassy of Afghanistan in Washington, D.C. I did work with the embassy, but I couldn't travel because of the COVID-19, which was not the good part of the program, but still I could get the experience that I wanted and worked on the topic that I wanted. I was involved in the research project on negotiations, peace negotiations with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And I worked on several other projects about women's history, sufferings, and achievements in Afghanistan. The work was not published. It was used for the embassy purpose, but I could publish as a short part of my work or like a small piece of my work as an article, which is published on the Rotary blog page. It's about women's history in Afghanistan. After my AFE, I did an internship at the department with Professor Ashok Swain on the water and politics issue between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which kind of made me interested in the water resources and conflict topic. Therefore, I choose to, for my thesis, I selected the topic about water transboundary water in conflict. I'm investigating about the links between the transboundary water and interstate conflict. For this purpose, I selected two cases, the shared water resources between India and Pakistan, and shared water resources between Afghanistan and Iran. And I'm looking for the variation and in the conflict after the countries achieve an agreement. The issues that both Afghanistan and Iran and Pakistan and India, they have water agreements, but still there are like variation in the impact of conflict in these countries after they achieved the agreement. So that's what I will be looking for. I cannot give an answer now, but I'm happy to answer any question which comes. Sorry about the background noise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we have a final presentation from Mariko.
First of all, I'd like to express my appreciation of this Rotary host family program, and special thanks to my host family, Mr. and Ms. Fries, and thank you for being here, the Ula here. Thank you very much. Without this host family, without the interaction with the Fries family and also the interaction with other host families, I could not survive the life abroad, which can be sometimes difficult, and also most of the Swedish experience, I think, I got from the host families, the interaction with the host families. So I want to say thank you. So I also will talk briefly about my AFE experience and the thesis topic. AFE, I worked with the Peace Building Association and United Nations Academic Council in Japan. And I worked for the publication, global international publication of their work, which is on global governance and multilateralism. So the topic covering some like climate change and disarmament and rule of law. But I think one of the topics interesting was the parliamentary diplomacy, which not only the president or prime minister or high government officials, but also the member of Diet or member of parliament of each country can cooperate with each other to tackle the global problems like poverty and infectious diseases. And I believe that this, multilateralism, cooperation across borders is very crucial right now, especially when we are facing infectious disease, global pandemic. So I'm proud of being involved in this work. And about my thesis topic, so I have focused on what I have focused on throughout the study at the Uppsala University has been the mediation. So I am assessing the relationship between mediation and the peace, how mediation can contribute to the peace. But peace means a lot. Some say, the stopping violence is peace. And also we can say resolving the root causes of the conflict is the peace. And I am interested in the latter, the resolution of war, so which we call positive peace. So my thesis topic is, and also mediation, there are many strategies. So simply, I am arguing one strategy is more like forceful strategy, which use military intervention or economic sanctions. That's one. And another mediation strategy is more like communication-based, like facilitating dialogue among warring parties. So in the past, majority of the studies say, to stop the violence, this forceful mediation strategy is effective, like economic sanctions. But the resolution of the root causes of conflict, we need communication. The warring parties need to talk. But also, to start the communication, the violence should be stopped. So my argument is both, we need both. We need forceful mediation and communication mediation. So I'm trying to test my hypothesis that the mediators need to combine these different mediation strategies to achieve the positive peace, which is a resolution of the root causes. So that would, so as Andy says, defining the positive peace is quite challenging. So I'm not sure how my thesis will come out, but I would like to do my best for the rest of my time. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for 9 interesting presentations. I'm sure we could continue quite a long time, but I know there will be a second chance. But so far, so good. I can see also from the chat that there's a lot of applause, and I think you all deserve that, even though most of them will be quite quiet today. Before we finish, the case is that we not only need more Peace Fellows, we also need several more host families. So I'll hand over the word to Ulrika Ståhl, in charge of our host families. Ulrika.
Yes, on behalf of the host area committee, this is a voice from the family section, family matching section, together with Lotta Enström, who has just entered the committee to help me with the matching policies. Thank you all Peace Fellows for bringing the world and your culture to Uppsala. Thank you all host families for sharing your and our culture with the Peace Fellows in a various way. Thank you host family Eva Forsgren for being the introductory speaker for the upcoming annual seminar in June. Curiosity and respect for other ways of thinking and doing different everyday things is a peace-fulfilling bridge for a better world. 10 new fellows from different parts of the world will arrive in August, and this is the 10-year anniversary of the Peace Program in Uppsala. Encourage your club members to take the opportunity to meet an incoming Peace Fellow for an unforgettable exchange. We need new families, and former host families are more than welcome to help us keep one of the success factors for the Peace Center here in Uppsala. Thanks to all of you, and please find new or former families. We need you.
Thank you, Ulrika. But thank you all for today for a very interesting presentation that you've given. And take care and see you, if not, at least on the 5th of June. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.